And welcome back to Carlo Prusa MMA. Today I'm with a very special guest. I'm with a 13-year UFC veteran. They call him the Bull. Out of Montreal, Quebec, Mr. John the Bull Makdessi. John, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
Absolutely, man. So, it's amazing when you look at your career, 13 years in the UFC. I was hearing online, you've been in mixed martial arts since you've been 6 years old. How did you find your start in the world of combat sports?
Well, the best way I put it is, as a young kid, my mother was always busy, you know, raised four kids and never really had time for me, and I was hyperactive. And my older brother at that time was practicing Taekwondo, and he took me to the gym at an early age, and ever since then, I just fell in love with it, and I dedicated myself, and it's funny how it kind of it's funny how it transitioned to mixed martial arts because my first discipline was taekwondo. My first teacher closed his gym down after multiple years of competing in taekwondo, and then I met another teacher who was a karate instructor, and he was a specialty was shotokan world champion, and then he closed his gym down, and then I met another French Canadian kickboxer guy, and I was under him for many years, and he also stopped coaching, and then that's when I met when I found mixed martial arts, watched Pride at that time on TV, and that's when I got introduced to TriStar Gym from my hometown.
Initially, as soon as you met Faraz Zahabi and the guys at TriStar, did you find a connection instantly with them?
Yeah, so I was very overwhelmed. TriStar Gym was a big gym. I come from small gyms, like very small gyms. So being at a gym that is full of good fighters, like when I walked into the gym, you got world champions in different skills like boxing, and it was a real mixed martial art gym. So you go into that gym, there's boxers, there's Muay Thai, there's Thai fighters, there's kickboxers, and then there's grapplers and wrestlers. So you couldn't it was pretty much very intimidating at first when I was about 21, 22. And yeah, Faraz was very, very welcoming. We are still friends today, even though I departed that gym. You know what I mean? There's sometimes just we grew. I wanted to travel. I was tired of the cold. I wasn't. I was raised in Montreal, and I just wanted to kind of live in the U.S. So I was always a big. I always felt like I always felt that I wanted to live in America and live the American dream, as they say. And also being contracted with the UFC for so long, I made that transition.
Now, you've been at this for a very long time. What people don't realize is, 20, 30 years ago, MMA was not as culturally accepted as it is now. At one point it was banned in a lot of places. I mean, it was banned in Ontario until 2013, I believe, New York 2015. Do you have any crazy fighting horror stories from some of the earlier promotions? Maybe mystery opponents, unsafe fighting conditions, no medicals, anything nuts?
Um, I was very fortunate. I kind of got into mixed martial arts where it was very, it was kind of sanctioned. My first promotion was King of the Cage, and they paid me I did not experience underground mixed martial arts because before, when it was illegal, it was in the reserve. Most of the fights were placed in the reserve where it was not sanctioned. So I'm very lucky. I got into it when it was kind of professional, and it was organized, and things were set in place. There's medicals had to be done. You had to kind of get your license. You had to have no criminal record. There was stages. There was levels. You can't just what I mean. It wasn't just like free for all.
And what was the Canadian MMA scene like? What was Canadian MMA scene back then like compared to what it is like now?
Yeah, I truly believe it kind of died out. It's not the same. When I got into UFC, sorry, when I got into in Montreal, the Canadian market with the mixed martial arts, there was ex MMA. It was a big promotion. There was TKO. There was a lot of good promotions back at home in Quebec. And you had a lot of guys who are still competing. It was obviously George St. Pierre, David Loiseau, Patrick Cote, Ivan Menjivar. There was like all kinds of pioneers that kind of gave guys like me and the younger wave a gate to kind of pursue it as a profession.
And what was that like training with GSP? I mean, is that always, even before your time in the UFC, has that always been someone you've looked up to?
Yeah, I mean, training with George. I mean, like I said, TriStar was crazy. You know, you walk into that room, you got a kickboxing world champion who's a coach holding pads for a normal guy, you know, and then you got a boxing champion who's like just doing a couple of rounds, and then you got George who's kind of warming up, getting his like getting ready for the getting ready for MMA training. So at that time, the more I never really had the time to let it sit and realize the experience that I had, because I was so focused in a sense where like I wasn't like, oh, George is a world champion, and my mentality was I need to beat up this guy because I want to be a world champion. So I took him like it was more of a competitive training partner versus like, oh, I was amazed. You know what I mean? I have a lot of respect for George because obviously what he accomplished, because every fighter wants to be in his shoes. I feel like all the stars need to align. You know what I'm trying to say? And I'm gonna say something that most guys probably will never say because they're pussies. Came from George St. Pierre's mouth, and he said it, and he said this to me. I'll never forget. He says, "If the UFC likes you, they're gonna build you up, and if they don't like you, they're gonna feed you to the wolves."
Now, talk about UFC. Let's get into your start there. Made your UFC debut, Montreal, George St. Pierre versus Josh Koscheck, too. You took on Pat Ottenwood. What was that experience like making your debut in Quebec?
Yeah. So at that time, I was 7-0. I fought a UFC veteran. And like the way a lot of people, the general public, doesn't really understand. It's a business, right? It's not an ego thing. It's not tough man wins. It's not an egoistical sport. It's a business. What does that mean? Like usually, ideally, you want to build up the fighter. You want him to have more or less equal fights. You want him to have an equal amount of fights in the sense where like skills versus skills, experience versus experience. Usually, ideally, you want the guy to have the same level of experiences. So like in my beginning, in the beginning of my phase of my professional career, I was fighting relatively equal guys to me. Like I was zero fights in mixed martial arts. There were zero fights in mixed martial arts. I had one fight. The guy had two fights. You know what I'm trying to say? It was very equal. And then once I got to UFC, it was just like Pat Otterwood was. I thought it was like a fair fight. He had. If I was 7-0 at 7 fights. I was doing mixed martial arts for like 3-4 years, and then he was 9-0, I think, at that time. I don't know, 1-9-1. So it was a fair fight. I beat him up, and then I fought Kyle Watson, and then he was on the Ultimate Fighter show, and he fought with George, and he trained with George St. Pierre. So that was a little bit of I had a little bit of a heated moment with George because I kind of lost respect for him because I'm like, I'm from TriStar, and he never backed me up, and he's backing up some other dude. So it's a dirty business. It's very dirty. There's a lot of dark things about mixed martial arts that the public don't know. You know what I mean? And it's a doggy dog world. Yes, it's a team sport to a certain degree because at the end of the day, you're stepping into the octagon alone. So, and then everyone goes back home to their families and friends. Like that's another thing people don't realize. You know what I mean? The fighter has to live with his loss forever. Win or lose, it's up to me. So when I got to the UFC, I felt like my first two fights were fair. And then I feel like my management team at that time made a big mistake. It was a big risk. They put me versus a guy who was a veteran, probably at that time was on steroids, Dennis Hallman. And I mean, I shouldn't. He was like 80 fights. It was ridiculous. Didn't make any sense. Like he had so much experience. Like it was not a fair fight. You know what I mean? And obviously showcased. He just literally bear hugged me the whole round. And I never felt that strength before. He was very strong.
Now you mentioned Kyle Watson. Let's talk about that a little bit. So obviously over the years, different provinces, different states have opened up to allow competitive MMA. And a lot of people talk, when you talk about the growth and the development for the UFC, a lot of people cite it being legalized in New York. But I think it being legalized in Ontario in 2011 is something that really gets underlooked for the rise and the development of mixed martial arts. I mean, you had UFC 129, you took on Kyle Watson, George St. Pierre, Jake Shields, 50,000 people in the Sky Dome. What was that experience like fighting in front of that many people? Because at the time, I mean, they've only had a handful of stadium shows before that.
Yeah, I think from all my experiences fighting with the UFC, with the organization, that was probably the biggest one. I remember it took me almost 15 minutes to walk to the octagon. Like 15 minutes, it feels like a lifetime. Like it was a long walk. I remember it was a long walk, one of the biggest arenas I ever fought in, and I should have won that bonus, and they gave it to Machida. Remember when Machida did that karate kick and he knocked out Randy Couture?
Yeah, it knocked his tooth right out. During that fight, you were able to knock out your opponent with a spinning back fist. Can you walk me through that? Was that something you were maybe thinking going into the fight, or did you just find the opening for that?
No, no, of course, everything's practice. Nothing is everything is practice. Preparation is key, obviously. Um, yeah, I trained that in the gym. I was working with at that time I was working with a kickboxing guy, and like literally like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, like he was actually it was funny because this guy was training training me, training other mixed martial artists, other dudes, and like he was like trying to make them teach them the spinning back fist, how to do it correctly. And he even told me he was like, I try to train it for George. I try to make it like George couldn't understand that technique, and I tried it for like a couple of weeks, and I actually landed it. That was it was a beautiful. And then in my later of my careers, it was hard to land that. It was hard for me to. I try to set up the spinning back fist, but fighters they they learn how to they're always constantly mixed martial arts is always evolving. So now fighters are very athletic. What does that mean? That means they're always moving around, they're not staying still. So it's harder to knock the guy out when they're always constantly in movement.
You know, you mentioned a really good point there. Fighting's evolving, and when you look at it from 20 years ago to now, I mean, I think every single fighter has evolved in the point now. If you want to be a world champion, you can't be a one-dimensional fighter. You know, back in the day, you could maybe get away with it if you were a really good striker, but you were lacking that ground game. But now you got kids going to the UFC at 24, 25, 26, 8-0 records that are fluent up top and on the bottom. And I think a big part of that is you kind of have to train year round, from what I'm gathering. Talk about the change of the game from back then to now, and how important is it to one, train year round, and two, be a complete all around fighter?
Yeah, I mean, I actually believe the mentality. So it's pretty funny. So the physical part, it got increased. So what does that mean? That means your fighters are a lot stronger, more athletic, explosive, but the mentality, the mental aspect, a lot of fighters are weaker. What does that mean? That means like we need to be more like go for the kill than focusing on point sparring. Like now it's becoming a point where it's like people want to either go for a submission or like I'm trying to say like I feel like I'm also a part of that, like in a sense where I was so focused on like not getting touched and being a clean fighter. And also, if you really pay attention to my resume, I was 100% striker. So there's a reason why I purposely wanted to be 100% striker because I wanted to be different than everyone else. I didn't want to just, I don't want to be like everyone else where it was like 50% stand up, 40% ground game. I was 100% striker and I was very proud because at the end of the day, like I have one of the highest rates in defense. People can't even touch me. I don't get like clean shots. I don't get hit often. I don't take a lot of damage. I don't get taken down often, and I don't get submitted. I got submitted once, and that was from a fucking guy who was on steroids, and he was twice as my size, and I wasn't. I was unexperienced. So, but I fought guys a lot more experienced than me. You know what I mean? I fought all my. If you look at my fights, I never fought someone that was like like my level. I was always fighting guys a lot more experienced than me.
Following the Hallman fight, yeah, you lost to Njokuani as well, and after that, you took on a fellow Canadian, in Sam Stout.
Here's the thing, that's another thing. Like, that's sorry to interrupt you, but here's the thing. Like, watching that fight, I watched my losses, my decision, like the decision losses. Decision doesn't like sometimes like what are you looking at? Are you looking at I mean, like they say it's a 10-9, they say it's a 9-10 point system. Number one, how can you do it a 10-9 point system when it's a 3 rounds? That's boxing. Boxing, you have 12 rounds. So that's more. You can't do a 10-9 point system in a 3 round fight, because what if the first round I want to take off, and then the second and the third round I put more volume, and I'm more accurate. Or what if I'm moving, or I'm making the guy miss the shots? Or what if I'm doing outgun control? So it's very like, you look at my decisions. I mean, it's very. I feel like it's sketchy. I'm just being biased, not because it's me, but it was on the record. Like, you look at significant strikes, you look at accuracy, you look at movement. Like, one thing about mixed martial arts they don't really focus on is defense, and defense is a skill. Like in boxing, a guy can win a round. In a boxing match, a guy can win a round without throwing a punch, just by slipping and dodging and moving, and that's a skill on its own.
Do you think they need to try to do a new type of scoring system?
100%. I mean, three 5-minute rounds is not really. It doesn't make any sense, because it's not enough time to it's not enough time to dictate, like, to make a decision. You know what I mean? If I rather put more rounds and lower the time. That would make more sense, because of you going into a fight. The first round, sometimes the guy is filling out the process. You know what I mean? You have all the adrenaline. You're nervous, so you need to, like, the first round usually is like kick starting the engine.
Following those 2 defeats, you took on Sam Stout. You're able to pick up a big victory over him. Given that you're coming off of a 2-loss skid, did that mean a lot?
That's another guy who has a lot more experience. I freaked out. I'll never forget. I knew who Sam Stout was. He was a big Canadian fighter, big Canadian TKO guy. He fought tough fights, hand of stone. I remember I was very nervous for that fight. I was scared. Like, he had like 80 fights. It was really crazy. Like, I'm like, I had like 9, 10 fights, and I beat him with a fucking jab. I literally beat him with a jab. He just kept on walking into my jab. So
A couple fights after that, personally, my favorite one of yours, a little biased because I was there. UFC 165, huge night. John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson won. You were able to finish Renee Ford in the first round. Can you walk me through that finish?
yeah, I mean, I was a big fan of Floyd Mayweather. I used to practice a lot of shoulder rolls. A lot of guys would be like, "Oh, that's not gonna work in MMA because there's elbows and stuff and throwing kicks." I mean, and I that's exactly what I did. I lured him in. I dropped my arm on purpose. I dropped my guard. I made him. He was overly aggressive. He overly committed, and I shoulder rolled, and I dropped him with a counter shot.
And overall, what has it been like fighting in Canada? I mean, if you look at your resume here, you have a lot of contests in Canada. Do you take a lot of pride in that?
I mean, yeah, Montreal. I'm undefeated in Montreal. If you look at Bell Center, I fought at the Bell Center. I'm undefeated. I mean, it's always you have the hometown, right? That actually was something about me that most people don't know is I used to hate traveling because it would stress the fuck out of me. Gave me a lot of anxiety because the UFC wanted me to travel in different countries and fight hometown fighters, and I was like, it's like I gotta travel, I gotta pay for like I gotta find a team, I gotta pay them, I gotta fucking take care of them, and I have to take care of myself. It's like it was a lot of stress. Like, fighting at home, you don't have to worry about nothing. You know what I mean? Like, you're fighting at your home base. You know the arena in and out. The fans, the energy is all there. You know what I mean? When you start traveling, I mean, you're in the airplane. You're flying. The food changes. The environment changes. You don't know what to expect. It's hard. It's very tough to fight as a when you don't have that home turf advantage.
When you look at it today, I think UFC is coming back to Toronto. I believe it's in January for the first time in I think 4 or 5 years. I think they were recently in Vancouver a few months ago. But obviously, COVID happened and you haven't seen too many events in Canada. Do you kind of feel, I mean, what do you think the reason for that is? Is it the COVID? Do you feel like maybe the Canadian mixed martial arts landscape is diminishing a little bit? What do you think?
I think the UFC is becoming like a circus. It's like Cirque du Soleil. Basically, they're at a point they want to maximize profit. They don't care about like making big events. It's not like it used to be like where the Fertitta brothers, like they really were passionate about the fighters. They're very passionate about the sport. Now it got bought from a big organization. They don't. It's a corporate. It became incorporate. What does that mean? Like there's constantly uh employees being changed or shuffling people around. They're cutting up workers. They're like fighters who are they're all these new fighters. There's like a waves and waves of fighters. I can't even keep track anymore. I don't even know how people can keep track. It's becoming diluted. It's not. It's diluted. There's no quality, I believe, and I think the reason why they don't come down to Canada is because they don't like the government, and it's money. It's always the end of the day, it's money, bro. Money makes the world go round. So if they're not profiting, they don't want to come that much. It's beneficial for them to stick to places where they can make the most profit.
Do you believe that's a reason why they're continuing to go in the apex, even though you can have crowds now?
Their arena, yeah, it's their arena. They don't. It's not. They're not. They're already. They're not. It's for them. It's makes sense,
You know,
right?
me and my friends talk about this a lot. 15, 20 years ago, when there was a big card, everyone was like, oh my goodness, Forrest Griffin's on this card, GSP's on this card. And, back in the day, you'd have maybe like one fight night a month and then maybe one pay-per-view. And everyone's super excited, knows every single person on the card. And now UFC's almost every single weekend. They have a card almost. And now it's like even someone like me who's a really diehard into this, it's like, I don't even know all these guys fighting anymore. Do you believe that the mystique maybe is gone or isn't as what it was 10 to 15 years ago?
Yeah, 100%. Of course, that's no doubt about it. Yeah, I believe that it's just like in anything. Like for example, relationship. Let's use relationship for example. Like right now it's so easy to download a dating app and meet a random person, right? So what does that do? What that just takes away the that takes away like when you actually meet someone, that takes away that like that it takes away that quality, right? It's just like there's so much going on that people are desensitized. It's like they don't care because they go to the next, like, oh, next we just fight every week, so people don't care as much. It's watered down. The quality does it's quantity over quality, and that's in my eyes the value goes down because the more of it, the less value it is. You know what I mean? I don't watch every UFC card.
When you first started getting into this, did you ever imagine mixed martial arts and especially the UFC to be as big as what it would end up being?
Honestly, no, I did not. Honestly, I was at a point in my life where I was just like, I want to make a lot of money, and what do I love? And I want to do it. I want to follow my passion, and I was like kind of fighting. One thing led to another. I did not know how big mixed martial arts was gonna be, but like back in those days, I was a big fan of Pride. Pride. Then the UFC, and then even now you have karate combat. Like yeah, bare knuckles. It's crazy. Like it's there's so much things. There's so many different forms of combat. It's like it's so hard to keep up to what's it's crazy. Just chaos.
Do you think anything has to do with the fact, maybe it is more culturally accepted now? I mean, now it's nothing to see amateurs fighting 18 years old. I mean, guys are coming to the UFC at 23, 24 years old with 7 or 8 pro fights under their belt. Is that something to do with it, you think?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think that it's evolving. Like you compare other major league sports like MLB, NFL, and NBA. Basketball, baseball, hockey has been around for hundreds of years. So obviously, you know what I mean? Like for a hockey player, they're starting at 6, 7 years old. mixed martial arts, I mean, it's only a matter of time. This is the new evolution of combat sports. That's why you look at the Russians, why they're dominating, because in the Russia they have a combat sport called sambo, and it's very similar to mixed martial arts. So that's why they're dominating, because they were exposed to that at a young age. Where like someone like me, I started mixed martial arts in my 20s. So now the young kids, they're starting MMA at 6, 7 years old. So it only makes sense that they're going to be high level at when they turn into adulthood, because now they understand that, hey, it's not just throwing fists. It's not just now it's, hey, I know I need to learn how to box. I need to learn how to clinch. I need to know how to throw kicks. I need to learn elbows. I need to learn grappling, submission, wrestling. Now they understand it. So they need to be well rounded. It's not just one dimension.
How do you think the element of personality has changed mixed martial arts?
The personality? What do you mean by
Uh,
personality?
like someone's personality, like their persona. If you watch now, obviously you had Conor McGregor. He was a big talker. The
Yeah,
popularity.
yeah. I mean, in my own experience, so this was probably one of the hardest things for me. In my own experience, I had a lot of people that came into my world that try to turn me into something that I'm not. So, and I'm a big believer in like to be always authentic and always be real to myself. Like, what does that mean? You know, it's always like, oh, John, you gotta talk trash. You have to be the bad guy. You have to do this and you have to do that, and you gotta sell tickets. And it was always hard for me because I was always going. I was it was causing a lot of internal conflict within myself, because I believe that it's like, if I believe that fighting speaks for me. Number one, my style of fighting should be my billboard. You know, actions speak louder than words. You know, and also being a good role model. You know, I always try to inspire and motivate the younger youth and be like, in a sense, like, hey, like, we're fighters. We're gonna beat up each other. Like, I got a bad fucking temper. I have rage in me. I make a lot of mistakes, but this is what makes you a martial artist. This is what separates a martial artist and a street fighter, is basically it's discipline. Is like, just because you know how to fight doesn't mean you're gonna go to the bar and get drunk and go beat up a guy just because you feel tough. You know what I mean? You look at all these fighters now. Look at John Jones. You look at Conor McGregor, getting drunk, doing cocaine. Going to George St. Pierre, going to strip clubs, like fucking just like, not, you know what I'm trying to say. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not saying like I'm an angel. I'm just saying like, but I also practice what I preach. Like, you'll never catch me in a bar. I would never fight a guy in the bar. I would never fight a guy in the streets. In my eyes, I'm like, I get paid to fight. And then also the whole purpose of martial arts is when you get into the gym, the first thing your teacher says is that if you ever use it for bad, I'm gonna kick you out of my dojo. Like, like I grew up in a traditional martial arts where if my teacher ever finds out that I use everything that I learned, I use it against people for to harm them. Like if I'm gonna fight someone just because I feel like I'm tougher than him, that's, you know, I'm trying to say that's not the whole. That's not what martial arts is about. Martial arts is about is basically it's self defense. I'm never gonna be the aggressor, right? I'm always gonna. It's just like possessing a gun. I'm not gonna use it, but if I have to defend myself, I use it, right? So it's the same concept, right? So, and now it's just becoming a circus act. Now you see, like, yeah, yesterday's fight, that girl was twerking her ass, and her trainer was slapping it. I mean, honestly, that was fucking made me piss my pants. I was like, I'm like, am I watching a fight or a fucking porn movie? I don't even know what the fuck. I feel like I was getting horny watching it. I'm like, I was so confused. If it was like a pornography, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck is going on anymore. And then you get like, it's becoming like WWE basically. Just a lot of actors talking shit, and yeah, I mean, I get it. I understand that. I get it, but it's not really. It's kind of, it's not what martial arts is about though. But for the business aspect, I get it because it's entertainment.
Do you feel that Conor McGregor kind of had maybe a responsibility or had a role in paving this path?
I mean, yeah, for sure. But you have to, if you look at his history, if you look at his background, he was always like that. He wasn't like all of a sudden he made up this persona. He was you look at his fights in the lower promotion in Ireland, he was always talking shit and talking big and all that shit. So I mean, that was just it. Just money doesn't change someone. Money it just enhances your character. So if you're a piece of shit and you're rich, you're gonna be a bigger piece of shit. If you're a humble guy and you're rich, you're gonna be still gonna be a more generous, humble guy. Look at look at Warren Buffett. Like there's a lot of rich people out there that don't brag about them being rich. They don't. They wear. Warren Buffett is one of the biggest, one of the rich, wealthiest men on the planet. He still drives the same car, eats the same shit. Doesn't. He's not flamboyant. He's not flashing his money. And the guy is one of the richest persons on the planet. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's like you're comparing oranges and apples.
Let's get back to your MMA career a little bit. You departed TriStar. You went over to Rufus Sport in Wisconsin. What was that like? What led you to that gym? Obviously, the Pettis brothers were there. Barber was there. Mearshart was there. Bilal Muhammad. What led you there?
Yeah, well, at that time I was working with a guy, and I was just kind of like trying to figure out my one of my biggest things was for me was like I always felt like I never really fitted into a gym. Because I was very, I'm very stubborn. Like I'm not an easy person. Like I have, I have a background of martial arts, like, and I'm not, and my problem is like I've always been a leader. I don't like to just follow the herd, and I'm not gonna just like sit down and just shut up. I have my own personality. I have my own style. I have my own like I like to learn, but I also like to, like Bruce Lee, he always said it the best, absorb what is useful and discard what is not, right? So a lot of and you have to understand something. Okay, I'm gonna say this on camera. It's a business, just politics. What does that mean? The gym owner wants to be in control of the fighters because the fighters make the gym money. It's very simple. The fighters make the gym money. Professional fighters bring attraction to the regular clientele, brings membership. So the gym is making money. The gym is making money from multiple streams of income. So, but the fighter at the end of the day is one person. What does that mean? That means the fighter is not the gym owner is not giving a cut to the fighter. The gym owner is not saying like, hey, you know what I mean? We know that fighting is very unpredictable, and I know that it's a stressful, hard life. We're gonna make sure that you're financially well taken care of. So I want you to be more involved in the business. Obviously, they're not gonna do that. So what they do is they'll play like, oh yeah, no problem, come to our gym, train with us. We're gonna coach you, we'll train you, we'll corner you. But that's just because they have a hidden agenda. Because at the end of the day, if the it's fighters bring exposure to the gym. So being at Rufus Sport, Duke Rufus is a well-known world champion. Pettis brothers, he trained them, and it was a lot smaller. So I took a risk. I did not know if we were gonna click. You know what? I'm like, let me go there. I went to Rufus, Milwaukee. He has a good karate, kickboxing background. It just made sense because I come from that style. We clicked. He just kind of like worked my psyche, and he taught me some things, and it was a good camp. You know what I mean? The only issue is it was like money. Like they're like it's crazy. The thing is, what it was always hard was the business because gyms they expect fighters to pay them a lot of money, but the UFC doesn't pay us a lot of money. So like if I'm paying the gym money and I'm paying the manager money, I'm getting taxed on my money. Like what the fuck is the fighter left with? So I mean, some of these camps they were choke holding like my financial, and I'm like, man, I can't stay with you no more because I'm like, yeah, you because I couldn't afford them. Like it was just too expensive. The UFC is not paying us top dollars for us to afford all these coaches and managers that these managers. That's another thing. Management sucks. All these big company managers, they talk the talk, but they don't bring nothing to the table. You know what I'm trying to say? Like especially if you're already in the UFC, they're not doing anything for you. All they're doing is taking money from you. You know what I mean? And they promise you the world, and they deliver nothing. So most of my sponsors, I had to hustle it myself. I had to go and grind. I built my own brand. I built my own website, my own. You know what I mean? So it's a tough sport. I always tell the young generation, like you have to really love it. You have to be ready to die. You have to be very passionate about pursuing mixed martial arts because at the end of the day, no matter all the glory, all the everything, it's a very lonely sport. Fighting is a lonesome sport.
Do you believe that fighting's more mental than it is physical?
100%. It's emotionally, mentally exhausting more than physical. Physical, we take a rest. Like we train X amount of hours, your body's sore, and then you're like, okay, I go back home. But the mind never stops, and your emotion, all the trauma that you have from all the years of fighting and beating up your gym and like beating up the body, and like it's the emotional trauma that people don't realize. Like the post of training and the post fights. Like I still have dreams about my fights that I still have dreams about my I still have past trauma of my fights that I fought years back. You know what I mean? Like that I can't control. It's just some I don't. It's just like when I'm walking in the street and I just get triggered and I'm like, just, I start thinking about that fight. You know, and then it gets me aggravated.
Now back to your career here a little bit. You took on a guy, Ignacio Bahamendez. You're able to beat him. He came in a little overweight. What is that like when you weigh in and your opponent doesn't, and you have to kind of a catch weight situation?
Yeah, I mean it's always good. I make more money, but he was a newbie, so I made nothing. I made a couple of thousand. I made $2,000, which obviously would be a lot better if he was like a veteran because the paycheck would be a lot better. But yeah, it was not much. It was a couple. It was like 1,000 something. Like it was 20% of his purse, and he was probably making 6, 10, and 10. So he didn't make any money. And I took a portion of his money, but yeah, I was surprised. Like watching that fight, they said split decision. I was like, what the fuck? Like it just it's not because it's me. Like I'm very honest about certain things. Like I'll be like, you know what, I lost this fight. You know, I'll be the first to admit, like, you know what, he was the better man that night. He beat me up. But I was like watching the fight. I was like, I beat this guy unanimous. Like I controlled the octagon. I fucking I showcased my defense. I slipped his. I countered him multiple times. I almost knocked him out. I had him in the cage. I don't know where that was a split decision, but
So now you're over in Arizona. You're training with Fight Ready. What led you to there, and how are you enjoying being in that camp?
yeah, man, gyms are fucking they're headaches, bro. I'm at a point where I want to just fucking I gotta pull the trigger and just make my own gym because it's just like going to gyms and camps is just fucking just like it's drama. It's like it's always about money, you know. They just want my money. Um Fight Ready was good, you know what I mean? It was a good camp. It was a good experience. It was a good experience. They prepared me the best. They had some good fighters there, and it was nice to speak with Henry Cejudo. I picked his brain out. No, like for me, it was just more for like when I go to these camps, I just want to learn from the athlete. Like I was very, uh, I was very privileged. I had the opportunity to work alongside George St. Pierre, Anthony Pettis, Ben Henderson, obviously Henry Cejudo, and then I worked with like high level Olympic wrestling coaches, Olympic wrestling. I worked with Olympic wrestling gold medalists. I went to Thailand. I trained with Muay Thai champions. I trained with high level black belt Brazilian Jiu Jitsu guys. So for me, it was just like learning from other best guys, and try to figure out what works for me. So that's the journey of martial arts is like finding good mentors and trying to be a good learner and then try to figure out what works for you. Uh, Ideally for me it was always kind of like I love the training and the discipline and the preparation. I just never I was always turned off by the politics and the business because at the end of the UFC doesn't pay us a lot. We don't have that much money. Like I don't like it's like NHL. Let's just use another sport. So just so you have an idea. When you're a part of a baseball franchise, right? The player is not the player is not giving his coach a salary, is he? No. Is he paying for his nutrition coach? No. Is he paying for a strength conditioning coach? No, because the franchise is probably giving him all that, and he has this. The guy's sitting on the bench probably, and he's making all kinds of money. When you're a mixed martial artist, you're considered as a self-contracted, independent contractor. So it's up to me to hire all these people, and I gotta pay them from a small little salary the UFC pays us. It doesn't make any sense. Like there's no logic behind that. So obviously there's something is wrong with the business part, but nobody wants to talk about it because people make people it's uncomfortable for people. But I was like, fuck the UFC. I was a corporate. I was always respectful with the UFC. So I decided to kind of like, hey, this is how much money I make. I publicly, I don't know if you saw it, but I publicized my pay stub. I say there was rumors like, hey, this is John Makdessi's salary. So when I saw that, that got me so angry. I'm like, I better not make that much money. There was some rumors online that I made X amount of money, and I'm like, no, that's not true. This is how much money we made. I want to show the people how the UFC pays us and all the shit that we have to deal with as fighters. So it's a shitty business.
Most recently, you were on the wrong side of a controversial loss. A lot of people think you won your following last fight against Jamie Mullarkey, and following that, you were released for the UFC. Did that come as a surprise?
Yeah, 100%. I was very stressed out. I was very nervous. I was talking to Sean Shelby directly. I was fed up of managers because all they do is talk bullshit. So I spoke to UFC directly. I had Dana White and Sean Shelby. I sent them a text message. I was messaging them, exchanging messages, and Dana White was never responded to my messages. Very cold. Very never. I was very shocked because I felt like I proved myself to the company. I gave them some good fights. I fought Donald Cerrone at a 2 weeks notice. I broke my jaw. Like I always gave them a good fight. I was never a boring fighter. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that because it's me. I'm just talking facts. That's just I was never a boring fighter. I had some injuries. Unfortunately, I had a couple of like injuries, which sucks. I never want to be injured, but it comes with the territory. I had 7 surgeries within 2 years. But yeah, I mean, they wanted me to go to Australia and fight, and I had a feeling like they're trying to set me up to lose. And I knew that I had to knock the guy out. I knew that I had to knock the guy out. I wanted to knock him out, but during that fight, I knew it was a close fight, but I also felt like I had him. And if you look at that, and this is like fighter with fighter, like fighters know each other. Like we're in the gym, beat up each other. We know like okay, I got the best out of you, and I think he knew that I beat him, and they raised his hands, which it was fucking robbery. And then the fucking Australia government took 40% of my money, and I gotta try to get that back, and I lost that fight. And then UFC made up some bullshit excuse about they have to let go of fighters, which is fucking bullshit.
You've been doing this for a very long time. Since you've been doing it for a long time, have you had to kind of easen down the training a little bit? I mean, is your training the same thing as it was 10, 15 years ago?
No, now I can pretty much like I call it the old man strength. Like I can like coastline because I have so much experience. I can get away with certain things. You know what I mean? Because of muscle memory. So I don't. I'm trying to kind of like think of longevity versus like before when I was a young kid, I was just solely training with ego, right? It's basically just like beat the shit out of the body. Like that's all I knew was train hard. Like there was nothing else to know. Just train hard, beat the shit out of the body. Train hard, train hard. Now it's just like now it's just about training smarter than training harder. Now I pick and choose my battles. I don't try to win every battle in the gym. Sometimes I go to the gym. That's another thing. That's another whole fucking topic we can spend hours on. Is dumb ass training partners. You're in the gym. You're like just chilling. You're not like you're not in a fight or flight situation. Your nervous system is I'm calm. I'm going into a gym. I'm going into a practice. And then you have some fucking monkey that is nervous and he wants to like I'm training with John and I gotta prove something. And then I'm just like flowing and he decides to fucking pick me up and body slam me and then then I'm like, what the fuck did you do, you idiot? You just hurt me. You know what I mean? Like, why are you? You know, I'm trying to say like just dumbass training partners. Like you just like they're just stupid. They don't know how to control themselves. I had a training partner who was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I blacked out." I'm like, I go, "What the fuck? You blacked out? Were you stupid? Like you're a professional athlete." It's like being in the military and you just start fucking killing all of like just start shooting your fucking your like shooting your fucking army. Like you know what I'm trying to say? Like, oh, I'm sorry, I blacked out. Like what? Like, what, you stupid? You can't just fucking go around the gym hurting people because you're blacked out. Like dumbass training partners. You know, I suffered a lot of injuries in the gym because of stupid training partners that can't control themselves.
Is that something you see at every single gym? I mean, is that a big problem, people trying to prove points?
Every fucking gym. And then you see like what's his name? Max Holloway, you know, Max Holloway, he actually said it. He's like, I don't spar no more because some guys don't even want training partners no more because they're just dumbass because they don't know how to control themselves.
You know, another thing that kind of maybe frustrates me a little bit, I don't see your take on it. A lot more people are watching the sport in 2023 than they were, let's say, in 2005. And now you have this new type of fan, which a lot of people coin as the casual fan. You know, you go to fights, uh, guys are on the ground, they're switching positions, and it's just nothing but booze. How do you handle that?
I mean, I'm not a big fan of that style either. So I'm not a fan of going to the ground. I'm a striker. Like I like to keep it standing. It's exciting, right? But obviously, people are booing. That's out of my control. When I'm watching a fight, it's like a chess game for me. I'm very quiet. I have my coffee and I'm just analyzing. But people watch it for entertaining. I'm watching it for educational purposes. Those guys are watching it because they want to be entertained.
All right, last question for you, John. What's next following this UFC, the closure of that saga for you? Do you want to fight again? What's next for you?
Yeah, man. So I'm right now. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. I applied for my residency. I'm training at a gym. I'm coaching on the side. I have my own merch with millions.co. If you guys want to check it out, my Instagram is called bullwear underscore TM. Um, and I got some promotions that reach out to me. I'm looking for. I'm hoping to get either contracted from either Bellator, but I heard Bellator is apparently their organization is closing apparently. PFL, I wanted to fight, maybe get into the tournament. I'm also pushing for UFC. I'm also like, I've been tweeting, like give me one more opportunity. Um, uh, Karate Combat, uh, of course, bare knuckles fighting championship. I mean, any type people are reaching out to me, but nothing solid, no contracts yet. I'm hoping with guys like you, you guys are like people like do it for free. That's another thing, like at one point I was fighting for free. At one point I was training for free. Like that's another thing people don't realize. You know what I mean? You don't just reach UFC level overnight. There's levels to this game. I've been doing this my whole life. I gave this sport my whole heart. I dedicated myself, and like fighters need guys like you who are not sold out. That are still passionate because you're not making any money. So you don't have a script handed to you. You're not promoting just one individual fighter. You're talking to anyone that gives you that chance, and that's like there's a low class, middle class, and then there's a high class. And we need to like the problem is the world we live in right now. There's a big separation. The rich stays rich and the poor stays poor, and that's always been a problem with the society, with the world. And we need to help each other together to grow. And I need guys like you to be the voice of MMA fighters because there's a dark plague. A lot of fighters are scared to speak out. A lot of fighters don't want to talk out because of either getting cut from the organization, being released from the organization, and this is how we make our living. Like I'm this is the worst. Right now, I'm in a situation where it's like I don't know. like I'm at a point where it's like I'm 38. I got bills to pay. I have to send money to my parents. Like I haven't sent any money yet to my mom, and I was always taking care of my mother financially. The fucking UFC don't pay us. I feel like they make so much fucking money. They should fucking give us a better structure, salary wise. Like I always had a vision where it's like maybe don't pay us as much for the fight night, but give us like an annually salary where at least we have money to pay off coaches and gyms, and then maybe get like a bonus on fight night. Like there's so many things that I feel like can become better as a human, as civilization, as a company as a whole, as just in general. There's always rooms for improvement, right? Um, any guys like just kind of like get my fans, get people backing me up, like getting, talk to UFC, tweeting the UFC, tagging the UFC, like, hey, we need John, we want to see John fight. I think that's the only way, because if I don't have people backing me up, the UFC doesn't care about me, right? I'm just a number. So I need to get fans behind me. I need to get guys like you behind me, and hopefully, I some big organization signs me up.
Well, John, I appreciate the time. Back in the day, 5, 6 years ago, I used to write fan mail to you when you were training at Rufus Sports. So it's pretty amazing to have you on here and actually interview you. I really appreciate it, my man.
Oh, you did? I have no idea. I never even received this. Did I receive them? I don't even remember. I don't even know.
You'd always sign the cards. I'd send you cards. They'd always come back signed. You'd write notes and stuff. So I thank you for that too.
Perfect. I did not know. I was like, maybe shit. Did I miss you? Because sometimes I'm so focused and I forget about things.
Oh, absolutely. But John, thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you, brother.